celebrating and showcasing extraordinary people who are doing incredible things to make our world a better place. This is Close-Up Television. I'm your host, Jim Masters. Thanks for joining us. On today's episode, we celebrate certified values coach Heidi Glunz. Now, according to Heidi, we operate on two different sets of values: core values, which are inherent, and acquired values, which we absorb from our changing environment. Problems arise when our acquired values dominate our decisions and ultimately our lives. Heidi is a coach with Science2Wellbeing, where she specializes in individual and group coaching designed to create lasting behavioral changes. Science2Wellbeing's program was first developed by Dr. Senke Holzer, a cardiology researcher at the Medical University of Graz in Austria, who studied the impact that values can have on stress levels. Heidi helps her clients understand their core values and empowers them to operate those values in their careers and their daily lives. Heidi also trains coaches to help their clients understand their value systems through the Values to Wellbeing certification program. She says the key to finding your core values is to reflect on all the times in your life where you felt totally aligned with what you were doing in the moment and the intention behind it. Acquired values tend to show up as judgments or as our shoulds. This is absolutely fascinating. And to learn more, Heidi joins me in the Close-Up Television studios right now for this exclusive interview. Heidi, thanks so much for joining us here at Close-Up Television. A real pleasure. Welcome. It's nice to see you.
It's nice to be here. I'm really excited to be doing this, so thank you very much for having me.
Oh, it's our pleasure. We've done radio shows on Close-Up Radio with you as well and really got a chance to understand the importance and the impact you make with your work, but I'm looking forward to digging deeper with our television interview here. What first inspired you to do the work that you do? You know, we all have times in our own life's journey that we realize we're meant to do certain things in life that really speak to the essence of who we are as people. You've got an incredible varied background too. When did you realize for you that coaching, inspiring, empowering others is not only something that you want to do, but it's in your DNA, you have to do it?
Well, I actually originally went into the nuclear industry. I'm a nuclear engineer. I have a master's degree in nuclear engineering.
Yeah.
So I really was interested in science and in how to improve people's lives from a young age. But as I worked my way up into management and project management, I started to realize the best part of my day is when I sit with somebody one-on-one and really help problem solve and get them to find a solution to their problem. Yeah. Even if I don't come up with the solution, just working with them. And I was lucky enough that my mother is a coach. In fact, she's a master certified coach through the International Coach Federation. And she really saw it in me and said, you know, this is really something you should be doing. So I started exploring, and I really want to help people be able to figure out what's best for them and how to have a fulfilling and really a happy life.
That's really fantastic. So your mother, a great inspiration for you, huh?
Yes, very much so, always.
Were you always watching and studying what she was doing as a coach?
Well, my mother started out working her way up through retail. So she was the COO of a handbag company at one point. So I had always watched her from a leadership aspect because I knew she had really great leadership instincts and skills, and her people loved her. She has a following of people still to this day that just love her.
Charismatic.
Yes, and so I really wanted to be able to carry that on. And so it was really an endorsement when she said, you know, I'm a coach and I think this is something you should do.
So let's talk about that. I mean, the scientist, how did you make this transition? Did you think you were already doing elements of coaching already before you became the expert? It was just something that you were always doing?
Yeah, I had moved from technical work into project management, mostly because it gave me a chance to sort of be close to the technical aspects, but also I get to work with the people. And most of the problems are people problems, right? The schedule, the budget, they're people problems. They're not really technical issues.
Right.
So I spent most of my day helping people figure out how to make it work. And so I do really think that translates over into coaching. And I really was doing a lot of coaching already.
You know, I'm really fascinated by The values to well-being, and tell us a little bit about that, the program, and how you've applied it even to your work. Define it a little bit for us. It does sound amazing.
So Values to Wellbeing is our coach certification program to become a values coach.
Right.
So we teach you a framework of exercises and a format, if you will, to be able to work with clients to uncover all of their values. You mentioned it earlier, core and acquired values. We each have two sets of these values, and sometimes we don't really know what the difference is. So the first step is sort of to uncover them all and figure out which are which.
Mm-hmm.
And then we can move that into, okay, these are acquired values, and these might be stumbling blocks for your happiness or your fulfillment, or even your levels of stress and well-being, like physical stress on your heart.
Right.
And so how do we reframe them? How do we maybe change your beliefs around these acquired values, or determine a set point of, I can act up to this acquired value to this point, and then I need to have a boundary there that I don't cross for my own self.
Right.
So it's really a program that teaches coaches how to explore this with clients in a very intimate way.
Right, exactly, yeah. Yeah, because you're really breaking it all down, because it applies to every single one of us.
Yes.
On the planet. Define for us what a certified values coach is. We've heard of so many different kinds of coaches, from the football coach to an executive coach, a leadership coach, life coach. Tell us about the work of a certified values coach.
We believe values touch everything in your life. So whether you're doing leadership coaching or executive coaching or life coaching, or I even do financial coaching from time to time, it all comes back to your values. What we really want to give you is, hey, you've been through this program and you understand how to listen for when those values come up, because everything you say comes back to a value. The whole reason I'm here today comes back to a value.
To a value, right.
So you really have got to be able to tune in and listen to those things that are coming up, and then be comfortable asking those questions that really dig into things that can be a little bit emotional and a little bit uncomfortable for people, but it's for their own good.
I'm, again, really fascinated, too, about core values and acquired values, and I'd love to break that down a little bit more for our viewers and maybe set some examples. So the core values, are we born with those? Are those developed when we're children? Are we absorbing that from parents and grandparents and teachers and life around us? Or is that just something that we have, and then the acquired is what we're absorbing from everybody and all of our scenarios and experiences around us? Let's start with the core values, because you and I were chatting before we went live, and I said I tend to lean more towards the core as far as me, what my core, it's even almost like what a moral compass is, that you just have, no matter what goes on around that day, you still come back to that center of who you are and what you're about, and that's driving me. And then you bring in some of the acquired things that maybe spice things up and enhance things, or things you don't want to be involved in or do. Is that pretty much what we're talking about? Let's start with the core.
So your core values are innate to you. Dr. Holzer, the developer of this theory, believes that we're just born with a core set of programming, if you will. You have a hard drive full of files that show up the day that you're born, part of your psychological DNA. And then over time, as we're starting to develop, we show up on the world, and we have all of these people who love us and want to help us and want to instill things in us, and they start to infuse values into us. And so since we're so young, we haven't really figured out what our core programming is just yet. And so we start to get these other messages, and we start to mix them in and sort of create this collage of who we are. And it continues throughout your life. But we do have this sort of core sense of who we are and what's important to us that really just came as a package deal when we showed up here.
Right. That's amazing, huh?
Yeah.
So can those, since they're core values, and again, this is really fascinating, can core values be altered? Can they be strengthened or reduced? Can some of them be removed or added, or they're in there from the beginning and that's it. It's the acquired that you can sort of move around. Tell us about that. Once we have those core values established, those are the rock solid values. There's no really adjustment with them?
No, there's not an adjustment to them. They will always be core to you. There's something that you just can't help but be. We ask people, what can you not help but be?
Right.
Or ask your friends, what can you not help but be? That's
what
one way.
would be some examples? Like, is it be a good person, or be kind, or helpful, or?
So my top core value is actually responsibility. If as I go through the word choices of what it would be, it's responsibility. And I use myself as an example, but it showed up very early. I mean, I've always been the one that's making sure everybody has what they need. I make sure we're on time. I take care of my siblings. I may take care of my family, right? When my mother's busy, they're jumping in. And I do this naturally. It's not something anyone said, Heidi, you have to take this role. It was just how I sort of showed up in the world.
Yes.
Now, over time, right, we all have more than one core value. There's something in us, some other things in us. I have a serving value that comes up also. I like to serve others. They're kind of twins.
Yes, right. Yes, they play off each other. Yes.
But I also have a beauty value, and for me that shows up in doing poetry and having some sort of creative outlets. So there's a mixture of them. Over time, your emphasis of one core value or another may change, right? We're all in different seasons of our lives.
Right.
If you have children, you may be emphasizing a different core value.
Right.
If you're retired and you're sort of empty nesters, now you've got this tapestry you can go weave of whatever you want it to be.
So could there be values that are already there, you just haven't tapped into them or really used them because of timing of life, experiences, the scenario didn't call for that, and it was there, but now you're tapping into it?
Yeah.
That's fascinating.
And if people sit down and really think about what's truly important to them, and we put on facades sometimes, so other people may not see it, but there's other things under the surface. Yeah. And so that's when we start to connect with our core values, just by sort of thinking about what is really important to me.
So are there a list of typical core values, like a top 10 list or something that we all have, or what have you, or ones that if you lined 10 people up, everybody has at least that one? How does that work? Because people, I'm sure they're saying, well, what are those core values, and do I have that one or that one or that one? And how do you identify them?
So we are a coaching program, and so we base everything on 2 words. It depends.
I like that.
So there is no top 10 list of values. The word you choose as your value is your word.
It's your word. It's your own.
We don't have any judgment around how you describe your specific values. Yeah. And I know that there are other values programs out there that say, well, here's a list, pick some words, and we'll give you a list of suggestions, but pick the word that feels best for you. Somebody actually asked me the other day if love is a value, and my response was, is love a value to you? That's not how I would describe what you're describing, but that's your word, and that's okay.
The two that, it's interesting is when I was preparing for our television interview, I was thinking about mine, and like I say, I always really go to those core, and I think the core hasn't shifted. I think when I look back for myself at the way I was as a kid, I was already tapped into the core, but now with experts like you, I'm able to identify, not label, but define what those feelings and those thoughts and those values were that I had then. 2 that come to mind really fast for me, service, very much, running to the aid of everybody else, putting out everybody else's fires, making sure. They call me, even at close-up television radio, comforter in chief. I mean, that's just part of, but it's automatic pilot. I'm not aware of, I run with a bucket of water to somebody's fire versus run from it. And the second is empathy. That's huge. I really some of the emotional intelligence, understand and feel for the things I see that go on in our world, other people's burdens and plights, can connect to it, can relate to it, and want to help them through it. Those are like prominent service and empathy, which, like with yours, play off each other.
Yeah.
And I've been, they've only strengthened as time has gone on.
Yeah, and that is true for me also with my responsibility value. It just comes natural. If somebody says, will you do this? My response is 9 times out of 10, yes. And not only will I do it, but I will do it to the best of my ability.
Right.
Nobody said I had to be perfect or even excellent, but
yeah. Can you have
that's my goal.
That's exactly. Can you have a core value that can be so strong it dominates the other values, meaning it can get in the way? Like you can be so empathetic that you're not focusing on your needs or what you want, or you're so in service to the planet and everybody else that you're not taking care of a few things that you need. Can we have a value that's so powerful and strong and deep within us that it sort of is controlling and almost dwarfing some of those other important values that are right there under the surface?
So with a core value, we tend to see that those usually tend to serve people. They get energy from them, they feel better when they're using them. But we are starting to do a little bit of research about, can you start to distort your core value and sort of take it too far, right?
Yeah.
Is there still a set point or a boundary that you need to put on a core value to sort of keep yourself in check? And we've had a couple of clients that have come through where, okay, yeah, that's definitely a core value. The other thing to keep in mind is sometimes you can acquire another aspect of your core value. So for me, one of my top acquired values is security.
Yeah.
Now you can see security and responsibility, those can also reinforce each other.
Yes.
And it showed up for a while, it actually served me very well, right? Great career choices, made good money, all of those sorts of things. It wasn't until I started to realize how it was dominating all of my choices. It was always that little person on your shoulder telling you you're doing the wrong thing, that's not good enough.
Right.
You start to judge other people.
Right.
That's how you start to know this is an acquired value. This isn't who I truly am. It's trying to take over, it's trying to dominate. So we typically see that with acquired values.
So we have the core values that are innate, like you say, that are with us through our life, and then some of them may rise as, to the surface, and we identify them with them as life changes and morphs, and we take on new experiences. And then we have the acquired values. So again, it's like anything in life, we're acquiring, we're absorbing, we're picking things up. Do we sometimes go through life not realizing we're acquiring these things, and then we're living them, speaking them, and acting them, but never thought that we were going to acquire that? Tell us about that. Let's define again the acquired values, and what would be an acquired value? Can you acquire empathy, or are you born with it?
So you acquire values from lots of places. The first place is probably from your parental environment.
Yeah.
So whether that's a parent or a guardian or a caretaker, teachers, you get told, this is how you be happy. You need to be married. You need to go to college. That's a really popular one in the culture today. You have to go to college to be successful.
Right.
So you start to internalize these messages, and that's how it starts to form a value, is you're getting some message or you're watching some behavior and you're seeing that form, and you start to create a belief that ultimately turns into a value for you, and you start acting out of it. Now, not all acquired values are bad.
Right.
Some acquired values can be very helpful. They can even create synergies with your core values. When they start to become a problem is when they start to dominate your life and you get obsessive behaviors.
Yes.
So the reason I know my security value is acquired is because I would obsess. I would look at the bank account and I would want to watch the number go up.
So you're making sure that we're secure and we're safe and everything, that the bottom isn't going to drop out, the rug's not going to be pulled, and there's no shock and awe.
To this day, I have an emergency fund and an emergency fund for my emergency fund.
You do?
Yes. I'm a recovering acquired value addict.
That's funny. I had a friend who said she was a recovering perfectionist. I said, there probably isn't, that. It's just that you're in tune with it and you know what it is now and you're just, dealing with
Manage it.
Can that be acquired perfectionism? Because I've told friends, I think we've all had elements of that, especially in this industry, we're always striving for it, which probably is what drives us to it in a way. We can sort of express it through the fact that you have to get everything a certain way. But what I've told people who mention perfectionism, as I said, there really is no such thing. Maybe it's a lot easier if you say striving for excellence, because it's similar. You're still striving for the best or whatever you can do, but it's softer on the psyche to say excellence versus perfect.
Perfection can absolutely be an acquired value. And we all suffer from it. I mentioned I was in the nuclear industry.
Yeah.
Safety is huge.
Yeah, security, all of it.
We take that super seriously. It is not in my core nature to walk up to somebody on the street and say, hey, your ladder's in the wrong position. But it is now, because I worked in that industry for so long that now I'm tuned in. I will see that, and I very much have to control whether or not I go say to somebody, you're being unsafe.
Right.
Is it my place? Is it not my place? So it's very easy to acquire these, and we acquire them forever, right? From the people that we hang out with, our new friend groups, organizations that we join, whether that be volunteer or as a job. We pick up on all of the things around us and we start to internalize all of those messages. So you have to be very aware of what's true for you.
Does also setting boundaries sometimes help with this as well? Like if you are, service oriented and you're always running to everybody's aid, creating healthy boundaries can allow you to still express the desire to be service oriented, but also have boundaries to where there's a certain line where you need to then take care of yourself.
Yeah, and actually I'm glad you brought this up, because really the basis of all of this is our 3 needs. We all have 3 needs that we have to fulfill. We need to be autonomous, we need to have competence, and we need to feel connected. So we act out of our values on certain behaviors in an attempt to meet those needs, right? This is self-determination theory.
Right.
Sometimes we can get out of whack where our pursuit of trying to get one need met means the other 2 get pushed off to the side.
Yes.
So yes, I do think there is a need for boundaries. You need to keep a balance in place. Now that doesn't mean that if you're in a season of life that you can't focus on one need or one value for a period of time and sort of let the other 2 come back a little. But you're not going to be whole and complete unless you're meeting all 3 needs in some sort of balance over time.
Is one of the things that drew you to the study of this, the values, the core and the acquired, grown also out of your own experiences, your own trying to figure this out for yourself, saying, okay, well, what is this, what are these things I'm feeling and the experiences and what is this about? Tell us about how you've learned about it and how you've applied it even to your own life.
Yeah, this work is very important to me. When I was in 8th grade is when I decided to be a nuclear engineer. Wow. And I went with that pursuit wholehearted.
Because most kids in 8th grade, they're teasing about that. I'm going to be the astronaut, I'm going to be the doctor, I'm going to be but you knew.
I knew.
And did people around you know? They said, did they say, if Heidi says it, more than likely she's probably going to become it. Was that something they felt from you?
Most of my family knows that about me, but I would have boyfriends or friends and they're like, whatever. I'm like, okay.
You'll see.
You'll see.
Check back. I'll see you at the 20-year reunion.
Right. I'll let you know how it works out. But I went in this pursuit, and it wasn't that I didn't find some semblance of happiness there, but I remember sitting in my cubicle at my first job. I was so excited. I was going to design nuclear reactors for the Navy, and I thought I had made it.
Wow.
And within a week, I was crying in my office because I was alone. I was supposed to spend 40 hours a week in a cubicle and only talk to people once in a while.
Yeah.
So I immediately knew something's wrong.
Because you're a people person, you need to, like me, you feed off the energy of others, and to be just in that. I mean, not that you couldn't do it because you're skilled and you get it, but you need the connection with humanity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I thought, well, I'll get into management. And then I started learning about project management, and I thought, well, that's really interesting. Again, more about people, but I still get to ask good technical questions and be in the mix. But it just was never fulfilling for me, no matter what job change I made, what company, career title, whatever.
Speaking to, yeah.
It really wasn't lifting me up in the way that I wanted to. I was in a search for meaning. And when I found Dr. Holzer's work, I was really attached to it, because I think this is the key. We do all have something innate to us, and we need to be able to feed that and live in that.
So we're talking, a lot of this is, from a humanistic approach. Science, this is science-based as well. Tell us about how science plays a role in this business and in this work.
Yeah, so Dr. Holzer is a cardiology researcher at the Medical University of Graz. And she's recently written a book called Be You about these theories that she's put together, as well as the coaching program that she developed. What she wanted to do, she actually is a life coach as well. So she researches stress on the heart, and she knew that people were not really, that lack of satisfaction was really impacting physically, manifesting in different ways in the heart. And she wanted to be able to do something to show that and to present this work in a light that made it concrete and tangible. So she actually conducted a research study of 44 participants where she put together this coaching program, and she measured their life satisfaction through the program. And then, typical scientists, you have a control group and a non-control group.
Yeah.
So she had half of them were not coached. They just kind of went through it on their own. And then the other half were coached through the program. And the results were amazing. Almost everybody saw an increase in life satisfaction. But those that were coached through the process, that had a guide, that had a helper there with them, saw even more increases in their life satisfaction, and they were able to maintain it for the long term. Wow. So they presented this work at the Harvard Medical School coaching conference, leadership coaching conference in 2015, and they actually won an award for it. So, and she had a master certified coach help her develop with the coaching program as well. Her name is Michelle Payne, and she helped her to put this program together. So it's been a really fascinating journey, and they do really try to back everything up with research studies, clinical studies, to show that we have made progress in people's lives.
So you created Science2Wellbeing. Let's do, playing off all of this expertise and your own personal experiences. Let's talk about that. Now let's talk about some of the work that you do.
So Science2Wellbeing is sort of our umbrella. Our very first program was the Values to Wellbeing program. We wanted to get this out to coaches because we knew it could be so powerful in the hands of a coach.
Right.
The next step for us is we're developing a financial course. I'm a financial coach, and it's something that's near and dear to my heart. So we're developing Money to Wellbeing, and that will be a course, again, based on scientific principles, the way the brain works, how do you make and form good habits, but around your money, and how do you infuse that with your values and make sure that's important.
And that adds in that security element that you love so much, because making sure that you have what you need for life can be really
I learned some good budgeting skills along the way as a project manager, so I might as well share them.
Yes, exactly right. Yeah, no, that's terrific because you're pulling from your expertise.
Yeah. And then we also have a new self-paced program. So for those that are really interested in their core and acquired values but are not a coach and don't know where to find one yet, they can go through the program online. It will actually be launching next week. And they can sort of get an idea of what all of this is and what it means. And then if they're looking for a coach, we can link them up with a partner to help them.
So are you working with teams, corporations, groups, individuals? Tell us about all that and how that works.
So we can work with, we've done a lot of work with individuals. We've also done work with teams, helping them figure out their team values. So it all comes back to the individual first. We need to see where there are synergies, where people relate, and then help them focus on building a team structure of values and behaviors that really demonstrate those values. We also work in groups. You can do this as a group coaching, or you can have a facilitation of a group where you walk individuals through their own values, but in a group setting. And we really want to take this into organizations and leadership. People doing strategic planning, they write down these values, but then they never take it a step further.
Yeah.
And the word can mean so many different things to so many different people. So you really need to think just a little bit deeper to get it to mix with the people and help people see where there are those synergies and how, okay, this is the organization and this is me, but there's a nice overlap. And you can even look at it as to what roles people are playing in the organization. If the role doesn't really align with the person's value, well, how do we shift that role, or can we shift that person so that they can be more fulfilled in their life without having to, start over and get somebody else for the role?
How much does personalities come into play with all of this, all the different personalities that you see and you're working with and that make up, teams and organizations?
I actually think there is a lot to be said about the overlap of personalities and what people value. One of my values is efficiency, and I am a direct communicator.
Right, exactly.
I don't need an email with lots of fluff. You can send me the bullet points, I'm totally fine.
Yeah.
But other people are not like that.
They want the window dressing and the bedside manner.
That's how they see connection. Right?
Yeah.
So I do think that there's a lot to this. And we've been sort of anecdotally studying with our clients and the coaches that come through strength finders. If you've taken a strength finders test, do your strengths line up with what your values are? And there is a fair amount of overlap. Just, again, anecdotally, we haven't done an in-depth study, but there does seem to be quite a bit of overlap.
Wow, I like that, the strength test. That's really fascinating. So how does that work?
Strength Finders is an automatic test. You go through and you answer questions to figure out, what are your top 5 or top 34 strengths. And it's just like a personality test to some degree, but it asks questions about what you're good at and what you don't love, basically. So it does line up quite a bit.
So it sounds like, there's so many different things that are under that umbrella. When people come to you, are they already struggling? Or are they not sure even what they want? They just know that something's happening, or maybe they want to be more self-confident. They want to go to the next level in life, whatever it may be. What is usually, and again, it's obviously from what you're saying, it's not a cookie cutter approach. It's not one size fits all. You look at the individuals involved or the individual and customize it through the expertise for them. But do you find that there's a little bit of a thread maybe with it all?
Yeah, I do think that we see a lot of people looking for meaning and purpose.
Yeah.
I think they get very interested in this work because they're looking for meaning and purpose. But we offer so much more than that. I mean, our coach certification program will help coaches grow their practice. I have no doubt. It makes you a better coach. One of the things we know about us all is that we can have a bias to our own values. Doing this and going through this as a coach opens your eyes to all of those biases that you may be holding and not realizing are coming out on your clients. So there's that benefit. We're also International Coach Federation certified, so you get continuing education credits for going through the course. You also get the platform and the exercises and all the things that you need to execute. So it's a confidence booster, particularly for new coaches that are not sure how to go about this whole new business they're trying to create. Right. This gives you something unique, and it gives you a lot of confidence. And then there's the ultimate benefit is that you get to understand your values better, and you just get to get dialed in and listen for those values. So your coaching skills are going to skyrocket when you understand how to listen.
Do you find that a lot of people who are coaches and become really effective, good coaches, the type of coaching that they end up really excelling at is the type that really is reflecting their core values?
I believe so. And I think that that we've had those situations where a client we're not sure they're the best client for us.
Right.
And I think that goes back to a mismatch of values. You're sensing something that maybe I can't really support this person
Yeah.
because there's a mismatch of those values.
So if their values aren't aligning with what you're feeling, it can only go so far. You can make the attempt, but you can only really go so far with it.
Yeah.
Trust is another thing that's so crucial, really in all aspects of life. In this case, I would imagine, the coaches, including yourself, sometimes people open up and share things with you and with the coaches that are trained that they don't even share with their closest loved ones and friends and colleagues. So learning to establish right out of the gate the trust between them and their clients, you and the coaches as well, all of it is very important. It's paramount, right?
It is paramount. And a lot of coaches get a little concerned about this program because they don't want to delve into therapy. And of course, we don't want you delving into therapy either. You're not a therapist. But we also know that a lot of coaches shy away from emotion. And the minute somebody starts to cry or feel something, well, I don't want to be a therapist.
They shut down.
And we shut down.
Yeah.
But really, that's where the growth comes, right? We're all motivated by emotion.
Yeah.
Even if it's a logical decision,
Right.
the motivation is going to come from the emotion behind it. So this gives you an opportunity to really go deep with clients in a really cognizant way, and you do have to establish that trust.
That's a good point, too, to maybe touch upon, is some people, when they hear coach, they're thinking therapist. They're thinking that it's going to be a real great therapy session. And there might be sort of elements, again, based on the individual and how they approach it and their values, may add more of that therapeutic way, holistic way, what have you, to it. But it's good to know that there is a difference between coaching and therapy, and there are times when somebody needs an even deeper therapy sort of situation, right?
Yes, 100%. Coaching is really about looking forward. This is trying to get you to sort of glance back at your past so that you can make moves and move forward. But if there's something that you really need to process and have support and overcome a trauma from the past, you need a therapist to support you through that. And we tell all of our coaches that, if people start to feel like they need that processing, it's okay to pause. The client sets the pace and the direction. Even with the self-paced program, as I've been putting it together, at the end of almost every lesson, I say, if you need more support processing this, I will even send you websites
Yeah, exactly.
for therapists that
we
can
have
support
resources available. And
yeah, because we want you to be able to move forward, but you may need to take a pause and really process through this.
Now, you said the self-paced program. I think that's fantastic. It's ingenious, because a lot of times people might be resistant to becoming a part of something because they're like, well, based on my values or interest or time allotment, I can't always follow that schedule and that timing, so I won't get involved. But tell us about the self-paced program. It sounds like there's a little bit more wiggle room.
Yeah, so we've taken the Be You, the book that Senka Holzer has written, and we've taken our coaching training program and we infused it into a program that's meant for individuals to go ahead and try to work through their values if they want on their own. So we have some exercises for you to start to uncover your acquired values and your core values. We have an assessment about how do you discern which are which. And then we have exercises that help you go through and decide, well, how do I want to move forward? How do I choose which core value or which acquired values to keep and which acquired values to let go or modify or maybe just reduce in some way? And so it's a really comprehensive program that allows you to sort of go through it and get an idea of what all of this means. And then, of course, along the way, if you want support and a coach, we have resources available to help with that too.
That's fantastic. So in the beginning, when you're meeting with the clients, and that could be now, with the technology, and of course, since all of the changes that have occurred with the pandemic we've gone through, technology has just been ramped up. People are using Zoom and everything else to facilitate these meetings and these conferences and sessions and things of that nature. How's that working for you? If somebody is watching this and they're saying, gee, I really like this, but does she come to me? Do I go to her? Is there a big conference? Is it over Zoom? How's it all work, or is it all the above?
Well, you can always do the self-paced program. That's all on your own. I'll be there as your guide to walk you through. If you want to get a Values Wellbeing coach, we have Values Wellbeing coaches all over the country. We will hook you up with somebody that either is near you or not, because we can do everything over Zoom.
Right.
Our Values Wellbeing coaching program is conducted live over Zoom. We start a cohort in September if there's any coaches out there that are interested, and it's done live, again, in person, but over Zoom, so we can really cover the whole globe. We've had participants from Italy, we've had coaches from Mexico, we have coaches everywhere.
So it's international.
Yes.
Which is fantastic.
Yes.
What about cultural differences? Sometimes values are also, especially the acquired, are coming, and the core, from cultural upbringings, cultural differences. So you have somebody who, comes from here and has that particular way of thinking and culture, and then you have this over here. The coach has a lot of work sometimes sort of evening that out, blending that together and bringing everybody together, right? Because sometimes people will say, well, my culture, I don't do this, think this, say that, or go in this direction. How does the cultural part of this also play into this?
Well, that's a really great question. When we acquire values, we first get them from our parents and our parental units. But as we get older, we start to get them from our generation.
Yeah,
The people, our peers, start to infuse that. What's going on with world events, all that starts to infuse values. And then you also get them from your culture and the nation that you're born in. Now, cultural humility would tell you that each individual has their own culture. There are people that grow up in this culture that don't do certain parts of that culture. So again, this program is beautiful because it takes all that into account. We already know you're an individual. We already know all of your values. Really, yeah, they probably came from somewhere, those acquired values, but how you internalize them and how they came up for you is totally unique to you. So I really do think this program is a step in the right direction for cultural humility, because you're allowed, now you get to see okay, this was the value, this was what was going on at the time, how did it affect me? But how did it affect them?
Right.
How did it affect my parents?
Right.
Why did they tell me I have to go to college? Why did they tell me I have to clean my room? Right?
Now you realize,
yes.
because if you don't, it doesn't get done, and that laundry just piles.
That's true. That is true.
And when you do the laundry, you have to put it away.
You do? Well, do you?
I know, that's always the rough part.
I don't know.
Some of that stuff, I try to always figure that out. The making of the bed, the dishes in the dishwasher, the daily stuff. You're using the dish, you got to put it in, wash it, put it away. It's just like a big circle.
It's
circle of
never
life.
Ending. Never ending. But if I look back at my grandmother, she would never throw away a butter container.
Oh, they had uses for everything. It's amazing.
But if you put it in context of her generation, well, at the end of the Great Depression, you didn't throw anything away. You kept everything.
Right.
So you really start to be able to relate to people in a new way. And one of the best questions we get after people go through the program is, well, now how do I tell everybody else about this? Because the first thing you want to do is go dissect somebody else's values.
Right. Do people tend to do that sometimes?
Oh, yeah. They all want to know, how do I go tell someone else?
You should be this, you should be service, you should be... Yeah.
You just said that because that's your value.
Right, exactly, right. Yeah, that could create a stoppage right there and a roadblock.
So we give you exercises to manage that also, because we understand it's exciting, it's motivating, and you want to share it. You just need to share it in a way that can be heard.
I'd love to hear maybe a couple of case studies. You don't have to mention names or anything, but some examples of the work in application where you dealt with an individual or client who was going through this, that, and the other thing, and how you were able to take them from point A to point B through the understanding and appreciation of all this work.
One of my favorite stories comes from the clinical trial. There was actually a couple that was going through it together. And it's a really good demonstration of how a value is really unique to you, because they both said that they valued support, being supportive.
Supportive, right.
And we went through the process of identifying their values. This came up as a top value for both of them, a very high-ranking value. But they couldn't understand how that could be true. Because for the woman, she's like, well, when I bought this new desk and my husband said he didn't like it, how is that being supportive?
Mm-hmm.
And the husband said, well, that is me being supportive, because I always want you to look your best, and I always want you to be seen as the best. And I don't like the desk.
Right.
So for her, it was...
He made it sure that he presented that in a perfect order. It's for you, it's to help you. But by the way, now that hopefully that's soaked in, I didn't like the desk anyway. Maybe he should be a little bit of a pause in between. See how the first part goes, and then see.
Yeah.
There's all strategy to it, right?
But you could see their beliefs about that value were totally different. In her mind, being supportive was, you tell me everything I do is great, and you're backing me 100%. And in his mind, it's, I have to tell you when you're going to make a misstep, otherwise I'm not being supportive. So instantly it resolved probably years of conflict, right? Right there in the second, because they're able to understand each other at a different level.
What if you have a situation where it is, where the person throughout their life, even from childhood, has always gotten the trophy. They've always had the gold star. They say there's a generation of that, where they've always been pushed forward, and everybody's a winner, and everybody gets a piece of the pie constantly, and you always get the trophy. And now you're in a scenario where you have to step up, and you're not going to just be handed that. You're not always going to get the compliment and the attaboy. Sometimes you're working with somebody that is going to be direct, or they're going to just say, look, this is what we need you to do, and maybe you can't absorb that. They're trying to help you along. What about people that, are used to just everything being, you're the best, you're great, you rock. And now all of a sudden they're coming across people who are saying, well, actually, for what we need to have done, we need a little adjustment here.
So I think it's going to depend on that person's core values and the acquired values that they have over time. If you've acquired a very strong value of, vanity's not the right word, but something where, I'm always doing well. That can really rock your world, and you're going to have to be able to figure out how to process through that. But even if through all those accolades you've always been doing things core to you, you're doing it for the love of drawing. You paint an award-winning picture, great, but you did it because it was a really good drawing. And you can tap back into, I really love to draw.
Yes.
That's different when those sort of accolades go away, because you just continue to do it for you.
For you, not just for the accolades. What about things, you hear a lot of discussion these days about entitlement feelings, narcissistic feelings. Are those acquired values?
Yeah, there's definitely probably a component of that. If you're being pressured to put everything on social media and it doesn't feel natural to you, then yeah, you're probably acquiring that value. I'll use myself as an example. I am not big on social media. I don't like it. It's not something I do.
Filtered photos on Instagram.
I don't even know how to do it. And it's not that I'm against it. It's never been something that appealed to me.
Appealed to you, right.
And but it's okay if it appeals to somebody else,
right,
as long as they're pursuing it in a healthy way.
It doesn't halt their life or hurt them or others.
They're not obsessing and doing it to the detriment of themselves, right? You're causing yourself stress.
And they're not living authentically.
Yes.
Which really is the core, pun intended, to all of this too, is living authentically and being in tune with that. Because we may also, I would imagine, try to acquire values that are not really central to us, or they're just not going to work, and maybe they'll work for a little bit because we're with a crowd, following the candle type thing, and I want to be liked, I want to be accepted, so I'm going to try to acquire what they have, and then you go home and you're like, I'm really struggling with this. That isn't me. Oh, how can I keep this facade? You probably find that a lot, right, with people?
Exactly, and that's a really big indicator that it's an acquired value. The two biggest indicators are, does it drain your energy? Do you have to force yourself to do this, or do you sort of get into a flow state? does time disappear? If time disappears, you're probably doing something that's touching into that core value and the need behind that core value.
Right.
Whereas if you come home mentally and physically exhausted from trying to push this, that's probably an indicator that it's an acquired value. Now, I just want to say one caveat. Working out of your acquired values doesn't mean it's always easy.
Right.
I mean, taking on the world's responsibilities
Yes.
sometimes is challenging.
Yes.
But if I meet a commitment, if I've helped somebody, I get a sense of pride and joy from that.
Yeah.
That's how I know that that's really important to me.
Yeah.
Whereas when I'm acting out of my security value, I'm tired and I don't want to do it anymore, but I think I have to.
Yeah.
Or I think someone's judging me. I think someone is going to say, you're not doing the right thing here. You're not good enough. That's when I know, okay, this is not really part of me. This is coming from outside.
Is procrastination another one of the values?
Depends on why you're procrastinating.
Did I hit a chord there?
Well, I'm guilty as anybody of procrastination.
I've heard of procrastinating perfectionists.
There you go.
Well, ding, ding, ding. I get a prize. I get the washer and dryer. Your supply rice-a-roni. Because the perfectionism is there, you procrastinate because once you get involved in whatever that is, even reorganizing a closet, it's going to be a 2-day project and you're not done until it's exactly the way. So everything else has to shut off and be blocked off. It's going to be like tape around the room. Don't come in because I'm now in the thick of that because you're investing in it. Is that core or acquired or combo?
There's probably a piece of acquired in there somewhere, for sure. I'm the same way. I don't like to clean my house because when I clean the house, clean the house.
You guys go away, go to the amusement park, go to the zoo, and come back tomorrow. I'm going to still be, working on the kitchen floor.
and I can bet that goes back to my grandmother, right?
Seeing and yeah.
She was adamant about being clean in the house, but when she did it, it was a lot of work.
So her core became your acquired.
Exactly. That is exactly what happened.
And that can happen, right?
Yes.
The core can become acquired.
Yeah. Or pieces of it. Pieces of your core value can get distorted into, you get this acquired belief. The value itself is still there.
Is there.
But you've put this thing on top of it that's not quite correct for you.
Yeah. I'm fascinated too, just maybe we can dip a little bit back into your incredible background in the nuclear world.
Sure.
Tell us about that.
Well, I started out working on a team that was designing a nuclear reactor for an aircraft carrier. And I quickly realized that designing means sitting in a cubicle all day.
Yeah.
So I actually went out and got my hands a little bit more dirty. I went to a facility where we would process the fuel to some degree for storage or other purposes. And at that time I started doing management and project management. And so I had at one point several engineers working for me. We were mitigating containers that had nuclear materials in them, and they were producing hydrogen inside, and we didn't want them to explode. So I was doing several things where I would go out to facilities and monitor, whether they've got their CRIT alarms in place, looking at their procedures. I would even do analysis to show whether or not they were being safe. And then I did some project management. So I actually managed projects where we would take materials and irradiate them in a reactor in Idaho, and then ship them out for testing to see what happens to the materials on a microscopic level after they've been irradiated. So I've done a number of things in that arena, and my last job was a project manager for NuScale Power, where we are designing a new type of nuclear reactor, and we're getting ready to deploy one hopefully in Idaho in a few years.
So you're doing that while you have a lot of different things that are on your plate. Multitasking is one of your core or acquired values?
Well, I like to be busy. That's one of the things about me. So
keep those rivers flowing.
Yeah, I'm a full-time coach now. I support Brain Squared Solutions, doing leadership development training and executive coaching, and also coach certification training. And then we have Values2Wellbeing and Science2Wellbeing, where I am the trainer and coach for that also.
And people might find it surprising, I had always learned this, that coaches get coached.
Yes.
coaches are coached as well, right? That's really important to continue to get that.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I'm lucky I have one in the family, so.
Right. Mom?
So I get mine relatively inexpensively, but yes, we all get coached. Having a mentor coach is really important. Coach supervision is a new buzzword that's going around the coaching industry, but it is really important to have even somebody just to be able to talk to and work through issues that are coming up. I mean, creating a new business is a challenge, and most coaches work individually.
Do you find sometimes you're also coaching your mother in certain ways?
We have a standing agreement.
Yes, a mother-daughter relationship.
Well, we always, whenever one of us calls, it is a little on the verge. The first question is, do you want to coach or do you just want to vent?
Or do you want me to be right?
So we know how to show up right from the beginning.
Right.
Do you want your mom right now or do you want your coach right now?
Do you want the coach right now? No, I just want a bowl of chicken soup. It's been a tough day.
I usually say, well, be my mom and then we'll get to the coach
And
part.
then we'll do the coach part. How would mom handle it? How would the coach handle it? That is funny. What's some of the feedback that you get from people who have gone through the programs and have really experienced great success with it?
We get great feedback. I mean, people really love this material. Especially the coaches that we're training to go out there and give it to their clients because it is so flexible. You know, we give you this platform and these exercises, but you don't have to do it that way. You can bring this into an already established coaching relationship, or, you know, if you get a new client and you start to sense this would be something that you can help them, you can parse it down and take pieces or parts of it. So it's really powerful. And the feedback we get, you know, we make all of the coaches go through the process themselves so they get to experience what this is like and have that to be able to help their clients. And the understanding, the things that come up that they never realized, wow, that is a value of mine. Or even people who hold core values. We've had people that have a core value of pleasure, but they've always thought that was bad.
Right,
and they shouldn't express that. And to sort of take that weight off and say, wait, no value's bad. I can use these values for, I always say you can use all the things I teach you for good or for evil.
Exactly right, yes.
There's nothing bad about any value.
Right. You really love this work, don't you?
I do.
Is just, and it's still a work in progress, right? You're growing, you're learning more, there's different aspects. How has what we've gone through individually and collectively with the pandemic changed anything for you in reflection, maybe some teachable moments? People have, I'm sure, been reaching out and looking for focus and for clarity. And what do I do next? And we've seen this great resignation where a lot of people have had phenomenal jobs and some entry-level jobs, whatever it may be, and they've left them. And they want to find things or create things on their own that are speaking to their core values, to the essence of who they are. And they want to inspire other people. People that have left six-figure jobs. That's just, I'm in that cubicle and it's, the security's there, but I'm not fulfilled. Take us through that and how what we've experienced, you know, again, collectively and individually, has created some changes in the way we're approaching everything now.
Well, I think there's two aspects here. One, I think everyone got to sort of go home and take a breath.
Yeah.
So I do think there naturally was a lot of self-reflection that happened. You know, once you finished Tiger King, there wasn't a whole lot else to do.
You baked the sourdough bread and everything, right?
Yeah, eventually you got to, well, I have to think about my life and where I am and what I want. And so I think this really gave people a chance to tune into what really is important to them. And part of that, I think they realized they could probably live on less money than they thought they could.
There's been a lot of that, yes.
I see a lot of that with financial coaching where people have this dollar amount in their mind, but there's two parts to the equation, income and spending.
Yeah, right.
So if you can manage both of those components, you're going to be successful regardless, right? So I think that's a big part of it. And then I do also think there has been at least attempts to have people acquire certain values, right, through the media and
Yeah.
all of the things that come up, and
Right.
the information that's given,
The
and
overload of information and misinformation and
and
all the craziness,
misinformation.
it can become very overwhelming for people.
It's very overwhelming, and I do think that we've started to see people acquire this value of, well, you have to behave this way or act this way, and that's appropriate. It's on both sides of the spectrum, right? There's
Right,
the pushback side, and there's the other side, and
You have to
they're
think
clashing.
and believe what I believe, or it's not true, or it just doesn't make sense, right? And that's not the way life operates. We all have things to present and give and offer, right?
Yeah, I mean, one of the biggest reasons to acquire a value is because you want to protect yourself.
Yeah.
So fear and self-protection drive a lot of acquired values. So when everything on the news is scary all night long,
Then
I
you
think it's,
sort of rein in and like, I don't trust that and them and this and
I think it'd be very easy to acquire value through all that. So I think there's been, just like everything, there's a consequence, and there's something that you get out of it. We got to start working from home
Right.
all the time, and at first I didn't love it. Now I love it.
Now you love it. You've adapted. Yeah.
So it just depends on your perspective and who you are and what you've really thought about over this time, what you've gained out of it.
Tell us about this amazing book, Be You.
So this is a book written by Dr. Senka Holzer, and it really encapsulates everything that we're trying to accomplish with this work. It's about the core and acquired values. There's a few exercises in there to help you start to uncover those, but really want you to get familiar with the idea that we all have two sets of values, and they come out in different ways. And our beliefs about those values are really important in how we show up every day.
There's a chapter 5 I really like. Our immediate influencers, family and close friends. I relate to that because I always say, here we are working in television and everything, and we have producers and executive producers. And I always say that my executive producers are my parents. They produced me. They're the executives, the executive producers. Tell us a little about, what people can experience when they read this. And is there anything from the book that speaks to you that you wanted to share?
The biggest thing for me is really the idea that we do have values that are inside of every one of us, that they're core to us. And that's why this work speaks to me. And you really have to dig a little bit to get there. Again, sometimes when we're developing, we start to acquire values and they get mixed in with the core values. And so they're hard to identify. Yeah. But once you figure out that this really isn't serving me, this value isn't really true for me, and it's starting to cause stress in my life, then you have the power to make choices, right?
Yeah, it's incredible. And I love the title, Be You, the Science of Becoming the Self You Were Born to Be. The science of becoming the self you were born to be. Sometimes we just assume it's an automatic, but it's a process, right?
Well, all coaching is based on psychological analysis, right? The humanistic psychology that was developed. And this book just takes it another step further. We've got self-determination theory that's referenced here in those 3 needs I mentioned, and how we build on that to really go forward in our life, and in what ways it starts to sort of get corrupted and not really serve us the way that we think it should.
Mm. Is there an importance between core and acquired that is more valuable? Are the core values more important than the acquired? Are they the ones that you really should never lose sight of, and always you may acquire, and then again that could enhance life and it can do a lot of different things, spice things up, but never lose sight of the core, not the world's, but your core values? Should we place emphasis first, start with the core, and then add in the acquired?
Yeah, you in order to be really fulfilled, in order to meet your unique brand of autonomy, competence, and connectedness, you have to act out of your core values. Now, it's not going to hurt you if you act out of acquired values to some degree. It's when it does start to hurt you, right? When you start to feel that stress. For me, I know when my security value's been triggered because I feel the tightness in my chest.
Yeah.
I start to get a little obsessive, right?
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
hear things come out of my mouth and I'm like, what am I saying?
Yeah, right.
And so those are triggers that I've started to notice, okay, you need to stop and reflect. What place are you coming from here? Is this really what matters to you? Is this coming out of your innate values, or is this coming from things that you think?
Exactly, that you've sort of maybe even created that might not even exist.
Yeah, you've made up a whole scenario that's not even real.
It's not even real. We tend to do that a lot,
We
don't
do
we?
that, yes.
And that just adds to the panic and the shock and awe and fear.
Correct.
Yeah, that's amazing.
But you really want to tap back into what's really important to you. And again, it's okay if you need to act out of an acquired value.
Yeah.
You really just want to, being aware is the first step. Okay,
Awareness.
this is my acquired value, and it's going to serve me to this point, and I'm okay with that. If I get any further down the road, I need to reevaluate. I need to see if that's serving me or if I need to come back to my core values.
Why do you love this work so much? You're so passionate about, not just an expert, but you're so passionate, and you're living, I mean, you're smiling right now because you're living it. You're living your bliss. Tell us about that.
It was really hard for me to not understand why the six-figure job, the prestige, I mean, I would be lying if I didn't say telling people you're a nuclear engineer isn't kind of cool. So, but why was that never enough? Why did I never figure out what I really needed? And so that's why I'm passionate about it, because I know there are lots of people out there just like me that are doing what they think is the right thing, and it's not really working. They're still not happy. They're stressed all the time. Their health is suffering. Their relationships are suffering. And I think that's why it's really important to me. I want people to be able to have a way out of that.
And you do it so well. You understand them, and you do it from that science-based but humanistic approach as well. And sometimes, too, I would imagine, because you got to where you basically said you were going to be in 8th grade, you get to that success level, and you're like, okay, now what? I've reached it. And it's really the hunt, it's the journey, it's the want, it's what I have to do to try to get it. That can be just as fulfilling and exciting, stressful, chaotic, and everything else, and not always secure, but still it's what gives you life and energy and drives you. And then when you've reached it, you're also, part of that could have been, you know what, there's more to this. There's more. I reached what I wanted to be in 8th grade, and I'm here, but I'm in a cubicle. I need people, I need conversation, I got to hear some giggling and laughter and what they had for dinner last night and all of that. And so some of that is that, right? I've reached it, and now what?
Now what's next? Yeah.
It's, I tapped in, didn't I?
You did. And I'm still trying to figure out what else is next, because you know, I know there's so many great things out there to do, and my focus right now is really making these businesses the best they can be, getting good leadership skills out to people, getting values work out to people so they can really understand themselves better. But I know there'll be something else that comes up next.
Is the bottom line too that we all want to be happy, and we want to be joyful through our relationships, through our daily living, through the work that we do? We want to be fulfilled, respected, appreciated, and joyful about it. That's the bottom line of all that the days bring our way. That's really the bottom line, right?
Yeah, I think that is. We all want to have meaning and purpose and feel like we're getting that competence. We're being respected for what we bring to the table. We feel like we can make choices about our lives that make us, you know, free to do what we want to do. And we all have some sort of connection. Those are the 3 basic needs. We need to have people in our lives that love us and that we can relate to and that we connect with. And we need to feel like we're good at something.
Yes, right. You know, I was going to ask what sets you apart, because there's so many people out there doing this work, but I think you've, just in hearing what you just said and what you said throughout, puts that stamp right on that. You really have a unique approach. And what I do like is, you know, you have the foundation of the original inspiration from your mother, seeing her do it, and she's inspiring other people and empowering them to, take, because there is responsibility of the individual. The coach isn't always going to be there 24/7, so you give them the tools that they can call upon when Heidi isn't on the phone or on the Zoom or in the room or whatever, which is what is the impactful, long-lasting part of all of this. And also, all these different experiences you've had in life you can pull from, which makes you very relatable to the client, right?
Yes, and you're right. This is about the individual. I will be a guide. I will ask you good questions. I will try to bring self-awareness. But at the end of the day, it's you who gets to decide what you want to do with it. Yeah,
that's cool stuff. What if somebody's watching and they're on the fence? They're like, oh, I love this, but I don't know what to do next. What's the next step for them?
The first thing I'd recommend is read Dr. Holzer's book. It's called Be You. It's out on Amazon. It's on all the places. It'll really give you an interesting look into more about core and acquired values and how she developed this theory. And then if you want to go further, join us in the self-paced program. It'll be live on Science2Wellbeing on March 5th. We'll start enrollment, and that'll give you even more depth. There's more exercises, right? It's not just the surface level of these or the core and acquired, but what do we do now? How do we really dig in and start dissecting our values? And then if you want to take it further, get a values coach. We're happy to help you with that, because there's nothing better than having someone that's going to challenge your thinking in that setting and just ask you good questions about where are you really at with this, bringing that awareness again.
Because sometimes we rely on those who reinforce our thinking and we're never challenged, but the challenge can be eye-opening and extraordinary, right?
Yeah. Well, you can get into groupthink, you can get into automatic think, where this is the message I've been told, it's in there, and if somebody comes along and says, but why is that true?
Right.
There's a really funny story in the book, Be You. The mom cuts the ends of the ham off, and the daughter says, why are you cutting the ends of the ham off? And she says, well, I don't know. So she calls her mom, and her mom says, well, I don't know, that's what my mom always did.
Right.
So they call Grandma.
Right.
And Grandma says, well, the ham didn't fit in the pan I had, so I had to cut the ends off.
See, that's why.
But
it was basic, right?
Exactly, but this is just like those messages in your head telling you have to do it this way. And instead of opening up your thinking and say, well, but what was the basis of doing it that way, and is there a better way for me?
Because you could also start a new tradition, too. I had a friend, a couple, they were, when they were together for the first time, they got their Christmas tree, and one of them always had tinsel. Their family always had tinsel on the tree. You don't even really see that anymore. And the other one didn't. They didn't put tinsel on the tree. And what a back and forth between the two, because they were younger and it was new to them, and they were still craving what they were used to and the comfort of either the tinsel on or the tinsel off. And it became, from what they told me, is the tree stayed bare for at least a week, before, a little tinsel went on over there, but none over there.
The great tinsel compromise.
The tinsel dilemma, right? It's like, sometimes it's all about tinsel, and that can stop the tree from being decorated.
Well, in coaching, we also say the thing is not the thing.
The thing
it wasn't about the tinsel.
It wasn't the tinsel. It was...
I don't know what it was, but I'm pretty sure it was something else.
That's it. That's why there's core and there's acquired.
Exactly.
That's it.
Somebody hit a value and they didn't know that they hit a value, and then we had an impasse and weren't sure how to get past it.
And nobody wanted to sort of, okay, I'll give you, that's your core, but this is my acquired. Let's.
Exactly.
No, it's like, well, I'm sticking with the core. No, I want to stick to the acquired. I know, it's funny. Sometimes you got to bring it all together and just sort of, even it out, That's funny. This is really funny. You love it because it's fun, right? Because you're always learning, and I think it's fascinating work. I love when we study ourselves. I love when we learn. Like I said, some of these things I talked about with the core for me are things I knew early on. Like I had a number of people always say to me that Jim, you operate from a higher consciousness. You're an intuitive, and you're a high-level empath. I'm like, okay, wow. And I've had multiple people say that who don't even know each one saying that. And I'm like, finally, I have definitions for the things that I felt when I was a kid. I was always like that. It's not, I'm doing it now because it's the thing. I've always felt that way. It's always, but now I can define what it is.
Well, I mean, back to my responsibility value, right? I remember coming home from school, I got a B+, and I was just in tears.
Yeah.
And my mother was
like, you're good. Yeah.
It's okay.
Yeah, you're good. Yeah.
But it was for me, right? I wanted to. I had a standard, and I wanted to meet it.
Was
and
it
not
to
being able
please
to do that.
please her, so she was proud?
No.
It was for you.
No. She was proud either way.
She was good with the B+.
Right.
Because you were a good kid, and right.
So I knew that was coming from internally to me, right? Just like I said, acting out of your core value doesn't mean it's always a pleasure cruise.
Right. It's self-imposed. Yeah.
There might be things that are hard that you have to go through. But as I look back, I am proud of the fact that I had good grades.
Yeah.
That was something that was important to me, showing that I could do that I could learn that and be with those people. That was important to me whether anybody cared or not.
Exactly right. Right, which is the key for people to realize. It's again, it always starts and ends with you. Starts and ends with you, and that's the authenticity to it all. This was fascinating, Heidi. I love this conversation. I really appreciate your taking the time to come to our studio here on the East Coast, and really, I love a deeper dive, and I love when we can break things out for our viewers, but also, go into different directions that people maybe, they can grab little bits and pieces of it and make it their own.
Absolutely.
And we encourage them to make contact with you to take an even deeper dive. This was a pleasure. Thanks so much for coming to the studio.
Thank you again. I had a great time. Appreciate it.
Best of luck, and keep empowering and inspiring everybody in the beautiful way you do.
I will.
Thanks again.
Thanks.
As you can see, Heidi is very passionate about her work. Now, if you'd like to learn more, visit this website, Science2Wellbeing.com. For Close Up Television and Radio, I'm Jim Masters. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you again next time.